Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of And Just One More Thing. I talk about the federal government a lot, mostly in terms of frustration with the legislation that continues to pile on, uh, pulling back on funding primarily for populations who are vulnerable and rely on our country's safety net service, which has actually been in place since the 1960s. When President Johnson was in office, he created the legislation he signed the legislation for Medicare and Medicaid, for SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance, and a range of other services that over the last 50 years we have come to kind of just accept as an ongoing part of what the federal government does for people who need some extra help. Apparently, that is becoming not the case. And my guest today is going to talk with me a little bit about ways to engage with the federal government, where there may be opportunities, if any, to mitigate some of the worst harms, and what it feels like to be in Congress right now if you are not the majority party. Hang on for just a second. I have known my guest today since he was a council member in the city of San Jose. He then served for 2 terms as mayor and is now known to all of us as Congressmember Sam Liccardo. I'll be right back for my conversation with the Congressmember. I am back with Congressmember Sam Liccardo. Sam, thank you so much for joining me today.
Great to be with you, Susan.
I want to thank you, first of all, for your strong support of the county's Measure A to try to mitigate against some of the harms of cuts to Medicaid and SNAP.
Thank you for your leadership.
Thanks.
Yeah,
We barely
amazing.
have caught our breath on that. And the latest hit is around the continuum of care, which, as you know, is funding to help address and end homelessness. You've been leading on a lot of bipartisan legislation and some powerful letters in this area. So I appreciate that support. Tell me more about what the appetite is to not cut housing support so dramatically.
Yeah, there's obviously quite a mess going on in DC. It's a nice way of putting it. And I know the county has been dealing with this in the front lines in so many ways, and I think with far more agility than I think any county in the country. And thank you for your leadership on this. But it's brutally tough. And on homelessness specifically, what we saw last week was a decision from HUD that would change the funding formulas essentially around this program called Continuum of Care. It's an almost $4 billion program that lots of counties throughout the country depend on, typically for supporting permanent housing and rapid rehousing, which are, of course, the bedrock approaches for addressing homelessness in this county and many others. The limits were dramatically reduced for how funding could go to those initiatives. And we know here in this county and in San Mateo County together, about 2,300 people could be severely impacted, meaning pushed out on the street. So cruel and chaotic change in policy, very little indication of what the administration was going to do. Even worse, apparently there's going to be a big gap in funding as well for a lot of nonprofits. It'll last 6 or 7 months between December 31st of this year and when the funding resumes next year. So there's a lot going on here. If there's any good news in any of this, there are Republicans who are actually starting to pay attention to it. And we're working hard to try to build some Republican support for pushing back and ultimately getting legislation in place to reverse the administration's decisions. But I think we've all seen what's going on more generally, with very small exceptions. This legislature is a wholly owned subsidiary of Trump Incorporated. They're not going to deviate unless they're really pushed. And so we're doing all the pushing and cajoling we can.
That's good. It really feels like each new policy is calculated to do the most harm to the most vulnerable people. And I know, we have talked about housing together for many years and looked at the spectrum of tiny homes and transitional shelters and emergency shelters, all the way through to permanent housing.
Yeah.
And each piece plays a role.
Yeah.
But this shift now to have the emergency shelters play the predominant role, I think is just so dangerous and incredibly short-sighted. And I know you have talked a lot about the importance of that balance. And I loved the line that you said somewhere, that Trump is a homewrecker.
Oh, actually, that was a brilliant line that was given to me by Francesca Segre on our team.
Then you
who comes
should
up with
say
all brilliant lines.
It's fabulous.
And I naturally said, no, that's all right.
No, Trump is a homewrecker. His policies will increase homelessness.
Yes.
And yes, and the unrealistic expectations for people to first become sober or fully address their mental health conditions has already been proven to not work, which is why we went to housing first in the first place.
Right.
It is madly frustrating.
It is. And look, there's a reasonable policy debate and discussion to be had around housing first, around how rigid or how flexible we want to be. But the truth is, at the end of the day, this is a solution that requires an and not an or.
Right.
We need certainly more resources in lots of ways. And the idea that local communities aren't going to be able to figure it out for themselves when they've been in the trenches, particularly Santa Clara County, it's been leading in so many ways, is very frustrating. This is, complete reversal of the Republican days when you used to believe that top-down mandates from Washington were not particularly productive for helping local communities solve their problems. Now we are getting top-down mandates in all kinds of ways. I mean, certainly the county's seeing it with homelessness, we're seeing it from universities, a whole host of ways. That is contradictory to what I think the old school Republicans believed, and obviously very destructive.
Right. That's an interesting perspective. They really are getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
The shutdown kind of hinged on expansion or extension of the Obamacare ACA subsidies. I know you've got some legislation. Is it the Fix It?
Yeah, Fix
It
that
would extend it, or at least push it down the road.
Yeah, extend it a couple of years, buy some time.
2 years. Do you think there is any real appetite for that? And clearly, there are people across the country in red states who need that health care.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's 22 million who are most directly affected, and many of those are folks who are living in red districts and red states. And in fact, we're all affected because we know as more healthy and young people are pushed out of insurance pools, it just makes it more expensive for everyone, really. So the good news is we're gaining co-sponsors. It's a slow process. We've got 4 Republicans, 4 Democrats. We don't allow any Democrats on the bill until we can get more Republicans, because you don't want to scare them all out.
Right.
It's what we call Noah's Ark. You got to get one of each, or else it starts to look like a Democratic bill. So this is the game you play. And the idea is to try to ensure that we can sort of present a bipartisan front. We know the Speaker has no desire to put a bill on the floor for a vote. And so similar to what we saw with Ro Khanna's effort, Tom Massey, over the release of the Epstein files, the game is to try to see if we can get enough Republicans on board to start to threaten that there could be a discharge petition, which is a procedure where you go around the Speaker essentially and force a vote on something the Speaker doesn't want to vote on. So the goal is to get this number up to, from 4 Republicans maybe to 10 or 12. I'm having conversations with probably 36 Republicans, constantly. Lots of them are saying we want to do this, but there's an enormous amount of fear, and we know that's the operative word in DC right now. And really, particularly since the president now has hinted that he may be willing to extend the ACA tax credits for 2 years and then pulled it back immediately within a matter of hours. Welcome to our world, right?
Yeah.
I think we're going to see something come out from the president next week. It may or may not resemble whatever he said he was going to do last week, and I think a lot of folks are frozen on the Republican side until they see that. Now, what I hope is going to happen is he'll say, "Hey, I think the sensible thing is, look, if you really believe that you need to convert all this into, FSA or HSA funds to give them back to the taxpayers, as Trump likes to say,
right.
then at least allow for a transition period. Let's extend the tax credits, and then we can figure out how to exactly to do that. Lord knows, we all hope by then we have a different
right.
Congress.
And yeah, that's a good goal. So you've been in your seat for less than a year, but I
Yeah.
have to say you sound kind of like a veteran, and you know what a discharge petition is, and you're working the system. Are you glad you won?
You have no idea how many people ask me that in one form or another.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there like 45 weeks. It feels like 45 years.
Yeah.
It's yeah. There's a news cycle that's about an hour and a half long, and then there's some new outrage. It's a really challenging moment. And I have to admit, look, I lived through Trump 1, right, when I was mayor, and it didn't feel like this.
No.
It feels different. So look, I think despite all the chaos, there's still opportunities, and you're seeing that certainly in your own leadership, where you're leading with colleagues on Measure A, which was so critically important. Obviously, a lot of dismal choices, but the fact that you can still make a difference with something like Measure A that will literally save lives. That's why we do this work, right? And I think similarly, in my shoes, you try to find those lanes where you can have some impact.
Right.
And for me, I think a little bit, to some extent, they're sort of relying on me to be the Republican whisperer among the frosh, because we've been trying to.
I'm not sure if that's a compliment.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but
a little bit of a backhand.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to, so I convene these groups. So, for example, we have convenings to talk about AI that are among the frosh members. There's about 60 of us, fresh Republicans and Democrats, to meet in the Library of Congress, and we have different folks come in to speak about AI and have some dialogue. God forbid we actually talk to each other. Because what amazes me is when I make these phone calls, people are surprised they're getting a direct call from another colleague. There's so little dialogue that's happening. And, we understand a lot of that because
because people have been burned so many times.
Right. And, I went into this thinking, like, I'm never going to hug it out with Marjorie Taylor Greene. But you see what happens over time. Marjorie Taylor Greene has suddenly become reborn, at least until she steps down. On a few issues, she's suddenly become, sensible sounding. So you have opportunities, and you just got to find those.
In order to do that, she had to eliminate all risk for herself by deciding to resign. So
it tells you
she's there, but
yeah.
It's not an immense move of courage.
No, clearly. On the other hand, for the purposes of Rose discharge petition, very helpful.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Right. So new Congress member, new city.
Yeah.
What are you liking outside of Capitol Hill? What are you enjoying? Have you found favorite hangouts, bars, restaurants?
I feel blessed in a lot of ways. First, I get to represent the most amazing community in the country.
We are pretty awesome.
We're amazing, and we're amazing in ways that we don't always appreciate until you sit down and talk to other colleagues and you listen to kind of the challenges they're dealing with. So it's amazing. It's just, for me, in many ways, for me to actually get to know other parts of this community that I really didn't know. Look, I was mayor of the city of San Jose. You generally don't go outside the city limits much when you're mayor because you got so many challenges to deal with. And now, I get to hang out in Half Moon Bay and, look at beautiful vistas, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
In DC, fortunately, my wife actually loves urban living, so that helps. There's lots of great restaurants to walk to. It's a very walkable city.
Right.
We also have amazing network of bike share and scooters and all that stuff with amazing lanes everywhere. And so you really don't need a car, and we don't have one. We live about 15 minutes walking distance from Capitol Hill in a little neighborhood called Navy Yard, which is 5 blocks away from a stadium. And I think we're like the oldest people in the neighborhood. Because like all baseball stadiums, there's a lot of bars and restaurants and stuff. And,
do you have favorites in Navy Yard?
There's a Puerto Rican restaurant, but I can't remember the name of any of them. My wife is the expert in all that stuff. So we go there, we go to a little tiny place. But, I wish I had more time. So when I'm there, it's usually compacted. Like I fly out on a Monday morning, you fly back on a Thursday night, and you literally, you're not sleeping much. You're just hustling. So the time I have to breathe is usually when I come home.
Yeah.
On the weekend, I have lots of community events and so forth and meetings, but you can actually breathe.
Well, God bless you for doing this work.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, you guys are at the front line. So I just feel like, as crazy as it is for us, I'm just grateful that, we've got great leadership here in the county. Thank you for what
Thanks.
you're doing, and please pass along my gratitude to your colleagues, because I know that you are dealing with these cuts and these challenges every
I
day.
will do that. And
Yeah,
thank you again for representing us so well, for really understanding what the biggest challenges are at the local level and what implementation means. And look forward to many, many more conversations over the years.
absolutely. Thanks,
Thanks so
Susan.
much, Sam.
Happy Thanksgiving.
I'll be right back with one more thing. Just one more thing for today. I'm, of course, as are probably many of you, thinking about the holiday season. And I have developed over the last 7 years what I at least think is a nice tradition of gifting all of my D4 team members with books every year. And I love the process of being in the bookstore, shout out to Hicklebee's, and looking through the selections and trying to find something that feels like a good match for each person. I feel like books are both universal and very individual and specific. And while I read predominantly fiction, secondarily kind of policy related books related to my work, one of the most powerful books I have ever read doesn't fall into that category, and it's called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl survived time in a concentration camp during the Holocaust, and as I said, survived and went on to become a psychiatrist and really brilliant philosopher. And his growth and evolution of moving from this incredibly horrid, unthinkable experience to having a life of goodness, understanding, a willingness to still find meaning in life, in the world, and in humanity is just it's just an incredibly powerful read. I've read the book probably 3 times, and I'm sure over the course of my life, I will go back to it at least a couple more. I would love to know what your favorite book is. I think you can drop things in the chat on a podcast. Take care. Have a great day.